Hey everybody, and welcome to the Growth Experience Podcast. I am your host, Chris Dye. Our hope is that by listening to this podcast, you realize that you have a gift. And by believing in your gift, you can uncover your purpose and have vision for your life. Whether you're listening in your car, at home, or watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, and let's go! Hey everybody, welcome to the Growth Experience Podcast, episode 13. Back, as you can see, with our Family Matters series today. Before we get started, though, I want to shout out now Community Land Title. Thank you to them for sponsoring this episode. Community Land Title is a full-service land title and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you will be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way. They were formerly Rocket Title Group, had a really exciting rebrand to Community Land Title. If you're a real estate agent and you do not have a title company that you go to often, that you trust, I highly recommend everybody at Community Land Title, Matthew, Tyler, Colleen, and Abby. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. They are incredible. Always available to answer my questions, so just want to continue to shout them out. They don't just sponsor the podcast. I use them regularly for our buyer clients, as well as if I have any questions on the title side. We'll jump right in after that. This is going to be kind of part 2 of the introduction to the Family Matters series that we had last time. And we're just going to, chop it up, do a little bit deeper dive. I think we went through 50% of our children and talked about them when we were here last time, Noah and Olivia, and our move from the military to, now we're living in Crestwood at this point in time, back in the old stomping grounds for both of us. Oldham 09, shout out to the OC. We might be making our way back that direction this summer. Maybe we'll talk about that, maybe not. Maybe we'll hold you in suspense until next month. If you haven't figured out, this is going to be a monthly series where we talk about everything from marriage and finances, right? She is not a loan officer.
0%.
0% a loan officer, but everything under the sun, parenting, all that stuff. I'm super excited to continue this series, and she's a little bit warmer this time. She called me when I was sitting in the parking lot and said that she feels like she's got some good material. So last time we had to pull her here. This time she's excited, I think. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say as well. And I know that our audience will be too. So without further ado, Kelsey Dye, Family Matters Part 2.
Hey.
Hey. Hey. How's it going?
Pretty good.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah. I thought it was funny that we're filming this the day before our 7th anniversary.
We are. I was going to mention that. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Tomorrow, when you hear this episode, it'll be past our 7-year anniversary, but today being Friday, tomorrow, April 8th, is our 7-year wedding anniversary. And I'm just going to throw you under the bus. You forgot that this morning.
I didn't.
When I said, do you know what tomorrow is? You said Saturday. And I was like, no.
We clarified that on the first episode, that you've always been better with dates. Okay.
You did say that, actually.
I did. So sticking to my guns on that one.
Sticking to your guns.
So picking up where we left off in the story of Kelsey and Chris.
Mm-hmm. This is like a big synopsis, right? Like we're doing a big kind of macro view of us and getting married and having kids. And I'm just going to let you just roll. Just pick it up.
So, funny story that I don't think we mentioned the first episode is we have 4 kids, right? Like, we have a lot of children. we did have 2 pup children as well. So crazy household, right?
One pup child.
If you had asked me up until age probably like 20, I would have told you I don't want to have kids. Like, that's not the path I want for my life. I want to go travel and do this and do that and like be a nurse practitioner, and like I was career minded and travel minded. Kids were the furthest thing from my radar. And it's just so funny. I was thinking through it today, like how God's plans for our lives are just usually so different than what we have envisioned, but always so much better too, right? And so anyways, I was just reflecting on that this morning, that like it's so funny that that's part of my story, that like my mom still teases me that like, you were my kid that said you never wanted to have kids and now you got all the kids.
Yeah, it's funny, like, too, going back to when, you know, I didn't tell my friends at 24 years old that we had reconnected and about Noah, because I felt like they wouldn't understand, right? And I've always been a little bit more mature for my age because of the stuff that I went. Don't look at me like that. I'm extremely mature, okay? Mature. Most of the time. So unless I'm at home, then then it's fair game. I get to take out all my ADHD at home. So I didn't tell them, you know, hey, I did say, hey, I met this girl, right? But it's cool because, like, once they knew, like, shout out to Trevor, man, I love you. Once Trevor found out and saw how I acted with you and Noah, like, he knew that you guys were going to be in my life for a long time. And I never said, I wanted to be a dad, right? And I wanted a big family because I was an only child. And so I didn't have any siblings growing up. I did grow up with my 2 cousins, but we weren't together all the time. We were very spread out. So I wanted that family. So
yeah, and we had talked about that even when we, you know, reconnected and got married and all the things and had the kid talk. Like, at that point I was already a mom, right? It's a big mind shift when you're already there versus
right.
Like it hasn't happened yet. So yeah, I had said, like, I came from a small family, right? Like, it was just me and my sister, and then even my extended family was really small too. So I had said, I've always been like kind of jealous of those families that have like huge family gatherings and stuff. And so anyways, we did it.
Yeah, we're doing it. Can't take it back now. It's happening. So
let's see. Matthew was, I would call, planned but unexpected.
Yeah, we wanted, planned in the sense that, like, we wanted another baby, and I really wanted another boy, right? And so, but it was, you know, I don't know how much you want to dive into that, but it was after your surgery that you had had. And
we don't have to go like super specific, but it was a lot sooner than we had anticipated. Right. Him and Olivia are not even 2 years apart.
Yeah.
So while it's really cool now, like, they're like BFFs most of the time, they also really get on each other's nerves a lot. But when they're vibing, they're BFFs.
Yeah.
Because they're so close in age. But man, that 2 under 2 thing, that is real. Yeah. That is a struggle. So we weren't quite planning that, but you know, it worked out. And then it's so funny too. We talk about like just the differences in all their personalities. Like Matthew is we call him our sweet boy, but like he's also just hysterical. Like he just makes us laugh all the time. He's so funny, but he's also, I think, more like me. Like he's pretty like laid back and chill for a 4-year-old, right?
Yeah, sometimes he'll, like, Olivia, you could be Joe Schmo off the street and talk to that girl, and she would talk right back and tell you about her life. And you know, she used to go to bed every night and say, I love all the people, Daddy. And you know, I always kind of teared up at that because it was super sweet. Matthew, is very introverted when he wants to be.
Right.
Right? So you could catch him in the right mood and he'll do the same thing. But if you don't,
Right.
he will not speak to you. Like there have been people that have come up to him and just, people think he's adorable. He's got glasses like me, or he had glasses before me, but just a super cute little kid. And, everybody sometimes, they'll try and talk to him and he's just looking at them. Like, and they keep going, right? They keep trying, and I have to tell them sometimes, like, he's not going to speak to you right now. Like, he's more of our introverted kid. But yeah, I mean, rewinding even still, like, when we had Matthew, he's a Halloween baby. Mm-hmm. So we talked about transitioning out of the military, jumped in and did car sales for a while at CarMax. Did some vehicle condition assessing first because we had to buy a house, right? So I needed that steady income, which was all well and good. And, when we had Matthew kind of being unplanned, that's yet again another transition in our lives. Like, even before he was born, you were working at the hospital in the NICU. That's when you no, you hadn't gone to the NICU yet.
Not yet. Yeah. It
So
was after him.
Yep. So we had, transitioned out of the military life. I was not working a 9-to-5. Obviously, with sales, you do not work a 9-to-5. Even if you clock in, clock out, you're on a W-2, but you're commission based. And so, that was when I had my first taste of sales. And I remember like telling you, like, hey, I think I finally found what I'm good at. And for literally just family reasons, back then I didn't put God first in my decisions, but it was just such a strong pull that I couldn't ignore it anyway. Like, God was leading me whether I wanted him to or not. And so I left sales to jump into construction for a more steady work schedule, the 7:30 to 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, weekends off, holidays off, pretty decent money still. And so it's just been a wild ride with us and kids and transitions, and maybe one day soon, hopefully, we'll be able to say that we are settled in, but it's not looking good. Not looking good so far. But I just wanted to provide some context again of where we were in our lives at that point. And poor little Matthew, right? We can just talk about him for a few minutes. After he was born, 10/31/18, like 12/28/18, he was in the hospital with RSV.
Yeah, we rung in the new year at Kelsey.
Yeah.
Yep. He's always been he had a rough start, and he was a few weeks early. Not really major complications, but some complications with the pregnancy. So like, he's always just kind of been maybe like the little guy, he's our little man. And so he's always struggled more like with health issues and stuff like that, but he's still great.
Yeah. But that was what was cool, because I talked about being in the NICU, but we had an incredible experience in the NICU, rung in the new year. We were there for a week. I was able to be off work the whole time, which was awesome. You were off work the whole time. And, being in the hospital room, it was after that, again, that was almost going on 5 years ago now, right? That we had such a good experience that you were like, oh, maybe I want to do NICU, because you wanted to transfer out of oncology, which you had done for so many years. And so maybe just kind of dive into your experience of, I don't know, moving to NICU and being with tiny people and
babies.
Yeah.
Yep. So my whole background in nursing up to that point had been hospital oncology, like an inpatient unit, and then when he was in the military, I did like hospice. So it had all been kind of like, and then like what am I trying to say? like an infusion center, giving chemo and things like that. So it all kind of revolved around that oncology world, end of life, that kind of stuff. And so in nursing school, I was like, same kind of one track mind, like I don't want anything to do with kids, so I didn't even like look twice at pediatrics. I was like, that is not for me. I'm not going that route. I don't do babies. And then, so we had the experience with Matthew. And while it's a terrible experience having your child in the hospital, like in no way, shape, or form am I saying that was a great week.
Yeah.
We had really great nurses, and the doctors are wonderful, and just the environment of the hospital was great and helped, ease a bad situation. So, but while the nurses were doing their thing, I was kind of like, this is interesting. Like, I feel like I would really enjoy this. So at that time I was at University of Louisville Hospital, and they had a NICU there. So I went to my boss and I was like, hey, is there any way that I could shadow the NICU? Like, I know this is random and out of the blue, but here was my experience, and I think I'm kind of being pulled in this direction. And he was super cool. He was like, yeah, sure, I'll contact the manager. So I did a shadow day there, and I just fell in love with it. So yeah, shortly after all that, transferred to the NICU, and then I've been doing that off and on for the last, I guess, like you said, 5 years. Taking some time off in between with the littles, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that as you're talking through that. So, this show is about people's stories, their expertise and strengths, their learning experiences, but it's also about, and what I've loved is it hasn't been planned. Pretty much everybody that's come onto the show been able to connect with faith, right? And so, in your kind of walk, like you said, and I stated as well, to go from putting my family as a priority, going from sales, which I loved, to construction, which I knew nothing about, and even coming home every day, you remember, I was kind of miserable.
Well, you were also doing it during the winter, and you really hate the cold.
I really can't stand the cold. I'm a Flow Rider boy, and the cold is miserable for me. So, that was fun times. But, even you just said, and I'm recounting the events, being pulled into the direction of the NICU at about the time in 2019, which was 4 years ago. And, it's funny, 2019 was also on Easter Sunday when we kind of rededicated our lives to Christ together as a married couple, which was cool because we had talked about it a lot, which that anniversary is 4 years ago coming up this Sunday. It's not something I planned to talk about today, but it just kind of hit me as we're walking through, I had some events in my life that I wasn't super proud of, and I know you did too. And so we had talked about when we got married, man, how cool would it be to one day, just get baptized together, just do it together. And like I said, rededicate our lives, right? And so, 4 years ago, this Sunday, I hope everybody has a great Easter weekend. We were sitting in the chairs at Southeast, and they had a altar call basically to get baptized. They do it every year on Easter, and we had not planned on it at all, but we had, right? We just hadn't planned on it that day at that time.
Right.
And so we looked at each other. I looked at you and you looked at me, and we were just like, let's do it, right? So yeah, we went back and
you were like, let's do it. And I was like,
maybe I remember the events differently than they transpired, but yeah, I said, let's do it. And, we did it. And I think, like I said, before then, we didn't put God first a lot of the time in our decisions. I think he always kind of led us because we believed in him, right, in Jesus, individually, right? But now collectively we made this decision to follow him together and lead our family. And that at that point we had 3 little babies. Noah wasn't a little baby anymore, but he's always going to be a baby, always be our baby. So yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I had to pull that memory back in because it's right here too.
Yeah, that's cool. That was a good one.
That
I
was
always
a good
still
one.
get like the goosies.
The
when
goosies.
when you talk about it.
And it's, man, okay. So, anyways, as I'm sitting here thinking about that, that was literally the exact same week that I said I had to go into real estate. So the first week of April of 2019, I had taken another job after we did the construction, not we, but our group. We completed, or we were about done with a 12-unit, 288 complex, 12 building, 288 unit complex, and I needed to find another job. And I had toyed around with the idea of real estate, but it just felt so unsteady, right? Which, I'm a risk taker, and I love unsteady and change and all the things, but when you have a family and a wife that doesn't, to put it kindly, we had a few conversations around that, and it's hard to make that change. But so I took a job as a salesperson for a general contracting company in Indiana, and as I got there, I felt like I was going to marry sales and construction. What it turned out to be was more of the construction side, right? Which we already determined that I wasn't a huge fan of. And so I came home, I think, after like 1 week. And I told you, I was like, I just can't do it. I have to try real estate. And so 4 years ago this week was when I made the determining factor that I was going to jump all in. I bought my courses. I politely told where I was working that it just wasn't a good fit for me. Nothing wrong. It's you, or it's me, not you kind of deal, right? Nothing wrong with you, but this doesn't fit what I'm looking for. And, it took me about 6 weeks to finish those and dive straight into a real estate career. So 4 years this June I've been licensed, which will also be my longest tenure job ever. I'm throwing that out there too. It'll be the longest time I've ever done a single job. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. It's not because I know you, but yes. Crazy.
It's not because you know me. What you know about me? You don't know me. So anyway, yeah, I think just I'm putting the ball in your court now. At this point we got 3 kiddos. I'm starting a new career in real estate, which we'd already talked about, felt weird, right? Didn't know how conducive that would be for our family. And you start busting butt and helping me achieve my dream of being in real estate.
Working that night shift.
Yep.
I had worked so hard to get to day shift. I had the cushy job on the oncology unit. I was day shift, usually charge nurse when I was there. It was so nice. And then I went 3 steps back to night shift, and yeah. But it was good. During that time was good old 2020. That was a fun year.
Oh yeah.
So we ended up, he's in real estate. I'm working night shift. Now all of a sudden we've got to do NTI from home. And yeah, it was a crazy time for us. But once again, we made it through. Just like everyone, somehow. Whew, it was a blur.
Yeah, and it was crazy too, because I talked about this. If as a listener, you haven't been able to listen to my podcast with Justin Ford, the Justin Ford Unleashed podcast, we'll put the link up right here. You can check that out, because I talked about it in that time of, she was working doubly hard. I was doing some daddy daycare stuff during the summer. I laughed earlier because I remember one time, and I still have the pictures to prove it, that I was home with the kids, and Matthew was you talked about the 2 under 2, and I kind of laughed at the beginning. I had just started my career in real estate, and I was making literally $0 for like 2 to 3 months. Fortunately, I was fully licensed in June, had my first closing in August of 2019. Shout out to my Kentucky Homes Group family. But it was intense. And, being at home with the babies, I remember one time I was taking care of Matthew. He wasn't even a year old yet. And I laid him down for a nap. And, I hadn't heard from Olivia or like heard her in a little while. And I was like, Olivia, what are you doing? And she's like, ah. And, I go into the bathroom where I hear her just carrying on. And she's got body wash, Super Mario red body wash, like all over her face and hair and the toilet seat, clothes, the floor, everywhere. And I was like, this is fatherhood. This is what it's all about. So anyways, quick sidebar there. But yeah, starting a new career in real estate, we had some money in the bank. One thing happened, one thing or another, and we had to get a new vehicle during that time too. So we had to use that money for that. And it was the first time, though, that I had started a job. I know I had already done sales before, but I was like, my whole job then and now still is just to connect with people. And, that's what I love doing. And so being on the phones or meeting new people, being around a team, reaching toward a common goal, I absolutely loved it, even though I had started off obviously really slow, and most people do. Fortunately, I was able to tap into my people that know me, like me, trust me. That's what we say in the industry, pretty quickly. And Josh, if you're listening to this, I'll always appreciate you, man, sending me his grandfather's farm in LaGrange to, I've helped his mom sell their house too now. And, it just got me rolling and gave me confidence, because I'm definitely that guy then, and still a little bit now, but I kind of lean on my own identity now and where I am. But then I was like, man, if I don't do something like now, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it. And so, rolling into 2020 COVID year, honestly, if I look at the numbers, was probably maybe number one, if not number two, my strongest year in real estate.
That's funny.
Yeah. During like COVID year, when there were so many of our colleagues in other states that they were not known as essential, and completely, like, you could not show houses at all, period. Whereas here in Kentucky, it was a week by week basis. We were like, man, we don't know what the government is going to say, what we can do, what we can't do. And every time they gave an update, they said, we were not listed as non-essential personnel, because the housing runs the economy, right? So I think that they wanted to keep that rolling. But yeah, that was, I had my first solo listing in 2020, really just started to take off in my career, not 6-8 months after I actually was licensed, which was kind of crazy to think about as well. But I know COVID was really hard for you. I was really nervous a lot of the time.
Yeah, it was a crazy time to be in healthcare, that's for sure. Just now, I actually ran into one of my old coworkers yesterday at Olivia's gymnastics, and she was talking about how they had just lifted the mask the mask mandate at Norton Women and Children's.
Wow.
And then
just now?
No, like a month ago.
Okay.
And then they just reinstated it like now. She said they got like 1 month where they were like, you don't need it, and then apparently like Jayco or somebody said it's highly recommended, so now they have to go back to it.
What's Jayco?
they're the people that like make sure the hospitals are up to standard.
Okay.
But yeah, it's crazy that like we are still seeing the effects of COVID in the medical world.
Yeah, in the healthcare system.
It still hasn't completely gone away. But yeah, those first few months were pretty scary just because no one knew what was going on. But we were the front lines, you know. So it was nerve-wracking. But honestly, our family didn't get hit with COVID until like a year later. So
2 years later.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were pretty fortunate. But yeah, so made it through all that. I think, you know, one of our biggest shifts, life changes. I mean, we've had a ton, but one of our probably most life-changing, I guess you would put it, influential decisions that we made. We lived in Crestwood, and I know you kind of talked about this with Brady when he was on, but like we had gone to talk to them about this church that they were planting, and you know, left, and I was like, man, that's super cool. I wish we could be a part of that, but we can't.
Yeah.
So like,
it was over an hour away.
Yeah, because they were, you know, saying it's going to be in Bardstown. We were in Crestwood at the time, and that's where we had decided. We were like, we're not moving again, so we're staying in Oldham County. We're done moving. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was just one of those that, like he mentioned, you know, before, most of our decisions, let's be honest, were made for us, mm-hmm. right? Like, or for, like, money purposes or whatever. But you know, it was around that time that we really started like, okay, listening and like, what do we feel like God is actually telling us or leading us to do? And so we left, and I just kept being like, I just really feel like God keeps telling us that we should be a part of this somehow. So we started tithing to it, right? We were like, mm-hmm. all right, we'll give. Like, we're totally going to give because we support this mission. And I think we actually even went to a service or like a worship night or something, mm-hmm. because we were driving back through Bardstown, right? Like Mount Washington. Mm-hmm. And because we had said, you know, if we decided to move out here, we were already kind of like toying with the idea, could this ever be a remote possibility? Yeah. Like maybe Mount Washington would be a good middle ground because it's like, you know, so close to Louisville, but also 30 minutes from Bardstown. And so, like, we had gone to Bardstown, I think, for a worship night or something.
It was at Wickland. I remember now. The very, very first service that Brady ever did with the Grove.
Yeah.
And we still lived in Crestwood at that point.
Yeah. And I guess we were both like, all right, like, I think we're bought in. And I was just, like, on my phone while we were driving, like, in the Zillow app looking for... At that point, I was like, let's just see what's for rent. Because, like, I don't know, you know, we would have to sell our house and do all the things. So, like, maybe let's just see what's for rent. Mm-hmm. And we were, like, at a stoplight. And I was like, go right. And he was like, what? And I was like, there's a house over there. It's 4-bedroom. Go right. Let's just go look at it. And so, I mean, it was a crazy whirlwind decision that if you've been listening at all is way out of character for me. That's like something that Chris would do no problem, but for me to be like, hey, there's a house for rent, hey, we should buy it, or hey, we should rent like crazy. But yeah, so we literally for us it was like the perfect house. It was 4 bedrooms. At that time we had 3 kids. Like it was, you know, in the school area we wanted to be in, or so we thought. Fenced backyard, we had 2 dogs. So, I mean, it was literally perfect.
To this day, Olivia says that that was still her favorite house.
Yeah, it's silly.
Which she's goofy, because the house we live in now is super nice. But
yeah. I don't know.
It's just funny.
They just liked it. Well, it was in a nice neighborhood that had, like, the sidewalks. So I've talked to you about that, though. I think that they enjoy, like, the fact that we did so much as a family at that house because mm-hmm. we would go on walks, like, every day. It was nice. We would go on a walk and, you know, just stuff like that.
Yep.
and we were really involved with the Grove because at that point we had committed to, okay, we're going to be on the launch team. And so, yeah.
Well, it was funny, right? So, like, I can, like, see these things as we're talking about them, right? So, that transition looked like, okay, let's go look at this house, which we did. We prayed about it. Let's submit an application to rent the property. Had not even talked about selling our home yet.
Yeah.
And we were just like, okay, if they accept our rental application and God wants us to do it, then we'll do it. And lo and behold, not 2 weeks later, they accepted our application to rent the property. And so we were like, well, now we got to get our house on the market, right? So then we just like hustled to get our house ready to list and sell in Oldham County. And we had just hit the 2-year mark there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just, I think the very, very first time we started listening to God was when I started real estate and you talked about tithing. So, in Scripture, it talks about bringing your whole tithe to the storehouse. And so even though, and I think in the sermon that Kyle preached, he even said, like, sometimes you're going to add it up and it's not going to make any sense. But that's the point of giving first things first, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had done, in 2019, we had started giving. Like, that was not something we were new to at the time Ashley and Brady came around. And so we just redirected our giving to the Grove when we made that decision. But that allowed us, right, when you trust God in those situations, especially in your finances, when it's like, so many people put so much weight and love into, right? You might not call it love, but that's what it is. When you make decisions around finances, we were able to take a step back and say, okay, where does God want us to be? And truly make that change from living in Crestwood to renting a house in Mount Washington, because we agreed and prayed into, okay, God is doing all these things, which was pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. Another whirlwind. Like, if you haven't figured out by now that, our lives have been this constant, especially the latter half, as we go into almost 7 years now, just trusting God. Where do you want us to be? What do you want us to do? We have not always liked the answers. That's a thing. And, a lot of times you're not supposed to, right?
Yeah.
Not only are you not going to like them, you're not supposed to, because they go against your human nature and what you've predetermined for your life. Like you said, okay, Oldham County, we both grew up there. We're moving back there. Oldham County schools, this, that, and the other. We had a house, and, it was just wasn't where we were supposed to stay. And we knew that. And so we picked up and not only committed our finances, but committed to physically being a part of the Grove as we moved to Mount Washington.
Yep. Then supplies.
Yeah.
Lainey was definitely a surprise baby.
Yeah.
We weren't expecting a fourth, but she's a wonderful surprise that we really truly feel like completes our family.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't imagine life without her at this point, which I'm sure everybody says that, but it felt like, I'll be real honest, I was terrified in the beginning. Like, holy cow, some days I don't even feel like I can keep up with these 3. How in the world are we going to have another one? But, as time came, we got more and more excited. And, when she finally made her appearance, it was just like, okay, we understand now. She was just supposed to be here, so.
Yep, she was supposed to be here.
Yep.
And it truly was like I don't know. I was excited. I know you were very stressed during your pregnancy about what that was going to look like, and neither of us really knew. But yeah, it was couldn't even fathom what it was going to be like to have 4 kids.
Yeah. Well, also...
And we had made the transition then before that, right, to Bardstown.
I mean, we had literally just decided.
Yeah.
Like, I think even so much so that, like, we had put in an offer on our house that has 4 bedrooms, which for the time was perfect, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was like, now we're going to have 4 kids and we don't have enough bedrooms. And I was like spiraling. Like, holy cow, what are we going to do? But yeah. So it was definitely a surprise. And then, you know, at that time, I think even in Mount Washington, I had transitioned to part-time. Is that accurate?
Yep.
So I'd been feeling like the pull for a while to be more of like a stay-at-home mom, even though that scared the bejesus out of me too. You know, just because I feel like especially moms, we can just be so hard on ourselves that like, I'm just not doing a good job. I'm not good at this. And like, you know, I struggled with that a lot. And I still, you know, have to kind of address that, but not as much these days. But yeah, so I was part-time, and then, you know, we found out about Lanebug, and at that time I went like PRN. So, you know, part-time is like you still have a scheduled 2 days a week. PRN is you have to do so many shifts within a month, right? So it's like it's very much easier to fit in kind of when you can, you know. But like Chris said, you know, real estate is a very up and down kind of business. So you never kind of know where things are coming from. So that was, for me, always a struggle of like, okay, so if I stay home more, like I'm, you know, worried about the finances and what all's coming in every month. So, you know, it was a struggle for me for years to kind of let that go. And I slowly tiered down. And then when Lainey came, it was kind of like, I went back even for a little bit PRN, and I like literally hated being there. Like I would just, and I loved my job. So that was like the crazy thing is at that point, I loved my job. I was at Hardin. So I was doing a lot of not just NICU, but also like admission nurse, which you go on like every delivery and you're the baby nurse. So like you get to see all these babies being born. And I loved that. And so, you know, when I would get up and like have to go to work and just like dread it, you know, I was like, okay, I feel like I really need to listen now that like I'm supposed to be home, even though it might not make sense financially, like that is what I'm supposed to do. And it's funny too, I mentioned the friend that I saw yesterday. She was saying how like, she just works 2 days. She's a WOW person. Right.
Weekends, right?
Yeah. But like how people are like so judgy sometimes about like, they're like, well, as long as you can pay your bills, I mean, I guess to work 2 days a week. Like, I don't know. It's like sometimes I feel like people that decide to leave the workforce like get a bad rap sometimes. Like, oh, well, you know, she just didn't want to work or whatever. But it, you know, I just feel like it, and I know the struggles on both ends, right? Like I've been the working mom and I've been the stay-at-home mom, and they're both equally hard in their own ways. But I feel like society just puts such I don't know, stigma around leaving the workforce as a mother. Yeah. And like you should be working 9 to 5 and doing all these things, and if you're not, then like, oh, like what are you doing? Yeah,
like culture says, especially as moms, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're supposed to work and be a mother and juggle sports and do this and do that, right?
Right. So yeah, it's crazy. Just like, I guess what I'm trying to make the point is like, you know, for me personally, I feel like God has been showing me with every kid, you know, 10 years later that, you know, I can work and I can have passions. Like I love babies and I love like that whole world. It is totally a passion of mine that I'm going to pursue. But he just kind of has laid it on my heart that, you know, being a mother is a gift that he has given me, and it's the most important gift that he has given me. So, like, I need to steward that well, right? And I just feel like, you know, as women and mothers, like, we need to support other women in those choices. Like, if they want to choose to stay at home with their babies, I feel like then we need to support that versus just kind of like
scoffing at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But yeah. So, and I've fought it. I've fought it because, like I said, I have passions, and I love working too. But, you know, I also feel like being a mama is what I'm supposed to do right now. So,
yeah, it depends on where you look and what you tell yourself provides you fulfillment, right? Because I know, like, when you show up to your job, it's almost predictable. Like, even though you're dealing with different patients, I'm dealing with different clients, different houses, different hospital rooms, or even different hospitals, right? Because you've worked at a few, had the privilege to work at some of the best. You know, it's predictable, right, to a degree, and you can be really good at your job. I know you take a lot of pride in being good at your job. I do as well. I get a lot of fulfillment when people tell me that I did a good job, and that they appreciate me. And whereas being a parent, because I've not nearly for the length of time that you have, but have done some stay-at-home dad type stints as well. It is 100% unpredictable. Like, the only predictable part is that, you know, when your 3 or 4 kids wake up in the morning, that they're supposed to also, like, go to sleep at night, and, like, you just keep count of all of them, and that you know where they are, which is, again, unpredictable. So it's really hard as a parent to find fulfillment sometimes, because you put so much pressure on yourself that you're not doing a good job or to the best of your ability, or this bad thing happened today, so that makes me a bad parent, right?
Right.
Which is not the case, right? That stuff,
Right.
I mean, it just happens, right? And I think with parenting, I didn't know we were going to go here, but I think with parenting, you want to look at the macro, right? Again, Scripture says when the children are old, they will not depart from it, right? Raise them up in the way they should go. Train them up, some translations say. So it's like, you know, okay, how old though, God? Like 10? Nope, it's not 10. We got one of those. We're not there yet. 20? Probably not, because I was 20 once, and so were you, right? So it's, you know, it's just funny how, like, everything that God wants you to do is really on His timing. And we take that for granted a lot of the time, that we want it to be when we want it.
Yeah, 100%.
Which, you know, because when we want it, it's usually when it's most comfortable.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
You were saying, my mom has always said that being a parent is the hardest but most rewarding job you'll ever have, and like that just always like rings true to me, you know, on those hard days. But there's always a moment, you know, they always give you a moment, like even if it's been a crazy day and they're pouring body wash on themselves, and
I'm pretty sure, like, I probably rocked her to bed that night or something.
Yeah, and you know, they snuggle in and they say, "I love you," and you know, it just makes it all better. Or they say, "I love all the people," or they want to say their prayers that night. You know, it makes it all worth it. So. Yep,
absolutely. And you know, something that we've been working through, and take this opportunity to encourage all parents, is, you know, what you say out loud can be very uplifting or detrimental, right? Whether your kids are around or they're not. And it's something that we're constantly working through. And you got onto me this morning. I don't remember what I called her, nappy head. Olivia, I said, go brush your hair, nappy head, because her hair was crazy. And so then when she left the room, you very quietly said, don't call her nappy, don't call her names. And so you're like, it's in every parenting book ever. And I was like, I haven't read every single parenting book, but I bet I can find one that it's not in, but it probably is. And so
it's just modeling, right? Like we tell them all the time, don't call each other names. And
right.
So yeah.
Anyhow, so taking this opportunity as a parent, and it's things that we talk about daily, when you say, I don't know, I'm guilty of it too. Like even like on their birthdays or whatever, when we make a birthday post, they're like, this kid drives me nuts, but I also love them, right? But like if you tell yourself constantly drive you nuts, then they're going to drive you nuts, right? Because that's what you're going to find, and what you focus on expands. And so it's just funny, like how much what we say, whether they're around or not, affects how we think about our kids or how we interact with our kids, right? Like my parents didn't play with me growing up. And so the more I say, I don't like games. Olivia loves games,
That's
right?
her love language.
That is her love language, to sit down and play some games. And it drives me nuts half the time, to be honest, because it takes a lot of energy and effort for me to sit still that long to play a game. But when I do it, I can tell that it fills her cup, which in turn fills my cup, right? So if rather than saying, Olivia, I'm not playing games, I don't like games, if I just say, all right, what game are you playing, right? And I know that she enjoys that, and so do all of our kids. Every single one of them loves games. So I've had to come to that learning curve pretty quick. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to throw that in there because I think a lot of people get tripped up in even just some of the, not just self-talk about ourselves,
right,
but how we talk about our kids.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. So, a lot of transition, a lot of change. We talked about Lainey. She's been an angel baby.
She's such a good baby.
Ever since she was born. She was born January 6th of 2022. Mm-hmm. So she's a little over a year old now. And
we were really hoping for that tax deduction, but she held
literally
strong.
New Year's Eve we went to the birthing center, which again, that's another thing we did. Lainey was not born in a hospital. Mama did all natural with Lainey and with Matthew. Matthew was in the hospital, but Lainey we did at the birthing center, Tree of Life in Indiana. It was actually a really cool experience. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it.
He was very unsure.
Yeah. They made you watch like an orientation type video. And I'll just tell you right now, watching somebody else have a baby as opposed to watching your own wife have a baby is very different. And so when I watched somebody else have a baby, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be, I was feeling a little nauseous. But when it came go time, game day, I'm always ready for game day for myself. And so she was an absolute, I don't know how you people, women, do that. Because, no, sir. Looking and watching that was intense. And I'll always appreciate how just beautiful that experience is.
It was
really
a good one.
Yeah.
The end result, it's just eyes on the prize.
Yeah. There was only one time where I felt like, and this was the other thing. So the man, the husband or significant other, when the woman is having their baby, if there are complications, the midwife is there for mom, and they made it very clear that the nurses are there for mom and baby, right? Mostly baby. And so if something goes wrong, it was then my responsibility to call the hospital, which was right across the street. And I'm like, listen, if something's going wrong, like, I'm probably going to be in freak out mode as well. So I don't know if this is going to go very well, but fortunately everything went just fine, thank God. And, there was one time where I could tell that you were like tuckered out and, just wrapped you up and told you could do it, and you did it. So you're the star of the show. Has nothing to do with me. I just want to, sometimes, because you're going to turn that around later and say, hey, you said that. No, I did absolutely nothing except just there for sport.
You were great, honey. It was good. And then we drove home in a blizzard.
Oh, yeah, we did. So January 7th, 2022
no,
was...
it was still the 6th, because she was born at like 4 a.m.
You're right. Oh, yeah, we got like 3 hours of sleep, and they kicked us out. They needed the room. So we drove home, and again, thank God I had a vehicle with four-wheel drive, because it was insane.
What was normally like a 50-minute drive was what, like 2.5 hours?
2.5 hours.
Yeah.
With as I'm driving, cars on each side of the road that had run off the street, and I was just like, I'm responsible for getting everybody home safely, and I'm terrified right now. It was on 3 hours of sleep. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was intense.
But, yeah. So anyways, that was a good time. So now, we've been in Bardstown with the Grove for 2 years, with the Grove for over 3 years. Has, again, made us put our eyes on God and what He wants for our family, which is not, again, it's not always the easiest thing, right? It says, again, in Psalms that the righteous will face many troubles. And so...
Well, in our specific family, you add a whole nother layer of complicated, because we do have a blended family. Yeah, we do the split family thing with Noah, so we have to take other people into account as well. And I think that's been I haven't always said this, but been a good thing for us as well, just because, like, we can get... One of the things that Grove has taught us is about community and being involved with others, and that life is not just about ourselves, right? And so I think that, there's a layer in there to where we have to be like, okay, we have to... And you're very good at this. I'm terrible at it. I'm just like, tell me the plan, and I'll execute the plan. But yeah, you got to plan around so many different things and scenarios and situations, and you're great at it. And so, yeah, but it's just one more thing that we've had to add into the fold for us and our family. Makes things a little more complicated, a little harder sometimes when you do feel like you're being called to do something.
Yeah, that's true.
But it doesn't necessarily make sense logically, or, what you feel like you want, right? We've struggled with that quite a bit the last couple of years. But
that's true too.
Every time we take that step, I feel like there's been validation on the other side that we're doing the right thing. So
yeah, but you don't know that until you take that step.
Right.
Right? Like, there's even still pieces of the next, the rest of this year for us that we're like, I don't know. Right. I don't know. We just got to... We feel like this is what we're supposed to do, and so we just do it.
Yeah.
And God's always been faithful for us and our family, and taught us to not lean on our own understanding and on ourselves, but lean on Him and everybody around us, right? Mm-hmm. Which has been good. We have great family, and I'm very thankful for that as well. So yeah, I guess kind of wrapping up, I was going to ask you something. Hold on. Pause. Everything. Freeze. Shh. Quiet. Oh, I was going to say, if you had... So as you can tell from our story, there's been a lot of transitions, a lot of questions, right? What do we do? When do we do? For maybe women that are not mothers yet, and some that are, what advice would you give around, like you had just talked about, these changes that you have to make that include more than just yourself, right? Your whole family now has to go through these different things. What are some, little nuggets that you would express to the listener?
So, I think one of the things like that you just said was like, we've had to make a lot of decisions quickly and kind of move here and there. It might have seemed quick from the outside looking in, but I think one of my biggest pieces of advice would be to very prayerfully consider all things. So like, while, a move in a year would seem crazy to some, it's something we had been praying about probably since we moved to Mount Washington, right? And like, so for me, it's that you're in constant prayer about whatever decision you're thinking about, but then, if it keeps coming back, and like,
that's good.
I feel like that's when you know that it's not just your idea, like that it's from God. So that's how I make those big life-changing kind of decisions is, it's not just a spur of the moment decision for me. Even if it seems quick, it can sometimes be quick, like weeks, months, but it's not like I just thought about it one time and then, okay, I think that's
which she is definitely, let me just tell you, okay, she is not that person, right? To where it's like, oh yeah, I thought of this and now let's go do it. That's me. But no, I love that you said that. And adding into the mix, my mom always says, get your confirmation in the Word.
Yeah.
Right. And neither one of us are where we want to be in our still. Like, I think you can always grow and improve in our daily walk and being in the Bible. But there are times when you're like, hey, look at this, read this. And I'm like, hey, read this and listen to this, right? And so I think there's a lot, like when those things are constantly coming back to your mind, like God puts it in front of you in other ways too, not just your idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would just say, as far as like taking care of your family as a whole, I would say through those changes or whatever you're going through, something I actually was reading in my devotional this week is just remembering that, like, just like adults, every kid has a love language, right? And so just making sure that you're paying attention to, like, okay, what are they going through during this and how can I help them through it? Because all of our kids are so different and respond so differently. And it's easy to feel like you need to have like a blanket parenting style. Like, no, this is how it's going to be done. And like, you're all going to fall in line. But it's so important, I feel like, and biblical to really like focus in on your child's gifts and like how they respond to certain situations. And, maybe one of them, their feelings get hurt easier than another, or, just focusing on those things and really, honing in on that, especially during transitions. It's tough. It's hard on kids just as it is on parents. They all crave routine, so.
Yeah, that's really good too. And along those same lines, like, if you don't know what your kids' giftings and strengths are, then you don't know yours. Because so often, like, Olivia, I always was like, man, she's just really like emotional about certain things, right? But then I had to look at myself and be like, she just hates rejection. She hates it. She cannot stand it, right? And so words of affirmation are her love language. Why? Because they're my love language. And so because I know that about myself, I can build her up in the way that she needs to be built up.
Not calling her a nappy head.
Yeah, 0 out of 10, do not recommend calling your kid a nappy head. But she gets me. It was a joke. It was fine. We can move on from that now. But yeah, and I love that you said that, because they will fall in line because you're the parents and they should. But how they respond to that line can be helped by you or hurt, helped or hindered by how you treat them.
Right.
Which I've had to come a long way in learning that as well. Yeah, that's good. Last time you were here, we brought it back around. Spotlight's on you. You said that you read a book.
I did read a book.
And a retreat that really helped shape some things for you. Do you remember the book?
I remember the book.
Let's go.
I remembered the book after we left. It's mom brain, okay? It's real. It's so real that like we have so many things going on in our head that we forget things a lot, okay? Anyways.
Not as much as I do.
So, Fervent by Priscilla Shearer would be like my go-to for any, it's geared more for moms, but I mean any woman really. Just discussing the power of prayer and, you know, how much that we should lean into that, but especially as mothers, you know, how we can use that to help our children, and it was just so good. Other ones, we were kind of decluttering this week, and I was going through the bookshelf, and I was like, ooh, this was a good one. Ooh, this was a good one too.
Mm-hmm.
So I do read.
You love to read. You just don't have a lot of time to do it.
I do. And I had a brief stint in network marketing kind of business. So we did a lot of like book study, personal growth kind of books. And my team leader, Tina, recommended You Are the Girl for the Job. And that is a really great book, not just for business women or whatever, but just for anyone. Speaking into really owning and stepping into the gifts that God has given you and being confident in that and being able to pursue what you feel like you're called to. So that's a really good, empowering one. And then another one, I don't know that it's so much like faith-based, but it's just a really good book, is Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. That's a good one.
I love your little attitude you put on that. Girl, wash your face. You know, that was good. Okay. Any other kind of parting words of wisdom for the show this week before you come back on next month?
I don't think so.
No?
Other than, I do want to just clarify, because I know personally I have a ton of close personal friends that are working mothers, that I in no way, shape, or form am saying that like you should be a stay-at-home mom if you're a working mom.
Man, you hit me with the knife hand like that. Jeez.
I just want to put that clarification out there, that that's my journey. That I feel like I have been on, but like I said, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I get both sides, and some people are meant to be working moms, and like no shade, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like I'm not pushing that like you should be a stay-at-home mom if you have kids. That's my personal journey.
Right.
So.
No agenda here, just your story and your experience.
Right.
Love it, love it. Well, I can't wait to have you back on next month. From now on, for our series where, you know, you kind of heard our background, our story, please feel free to reach out to either one of us with any questions or, you know, any need for clarification on some things, or you just have questions about being a parent or marriage or whatever. But from now on, we're actually going to pick a topic, and we're going to build on each one of these topics as we speak into our future episodes. And like I said, she will be here every single month. We're going to have Kelsey on the show, and she's the popular one. I'm just standing here, sitting here, I guess. So I'm excited to continue to have my wife. Happy anniversary, almost.
Thanks.
Here, I'm going to cry now. I'm not going to cry. I've gotten really emotional since we've been married and things. Okay, anyhow.
Are you going to ask how to get a hold of me? What if people want to talk to me?
Hey, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Definitely not my phone number, because I'm awful at answering my phone.
It's facts.
But probably the Facebook would be the best way. Kelsey Dye.
The Facebook.
The Facebook. I also never check Instagram. I have one, but I never check it. So
Yeah.
probably just the Facebook.
Just Facebook Messenger. You're better at responding to messages than actual text, probably.
Yes.
So. Yep, and like I said, feel free to reach out to her if you have. I mean, she loves community. We both love community and trying to help people and serve. And so I feel like I can speak for you in that anytime, she might not respond anytime, but anytime you feel like reaching out to her, please do. Again, I want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by now Community Land Title. Their website will be updated soon, but they are a full-service land, title, and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you will be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way, and I can personally attest to their professionalism, timeliness, and transparency. I love everybody at Community Land Title. They're just a joy to work with and be friends with as well. So feel free to reach out to them anytime. I know that they would be willing to accept any questions or conversation that you have for them. And just like with every single episode, I'm going to leave you with this. You have a gift. It's time to grow in it.